True greatness isn't born out of the applause of the crowd or the excitement of victory. It's born in the quiet moments, in the hours when no one is watching, and in the solitude of dedication. Champions are not made on game day or at the moment of glory. They are made long before the cameras turn on and the lights shine down. The journey to greatness happens in the shadows, when the only voice that matters is your own, pushing you forward even when it feels like no one else believes in you. In the world of sports, entertainment, or any competitive field, many people see the finished product, the perfectly executed performance, the podium finish, the world-class victory, but few see the grind behind it. The behind, the scenes work, the sacrifices, and the relentless commitment to improvement. This is where true champions rise. For every athlete who steps into the ring or onto the field, there are countless hours spent refining their technique, building their strength, and sharpening their mindset. These aren't glamorous moments. They don't come with accolades, cheers, or recognition, but these are the moments that count the most. It's where habits are built, skills are honed, and where an individual's true potential is unlocked. When we look at athletes like Conor McGregor, we see the brash confidence, the headline, grabbing moments, and the excitement of his victories. What we often overlook is the work that happens when the lights are off, when the crowds have dispersed, and when he's alone in the gym or with his team. The blood, sweat, and tears that don't show up on social media but are integral to his success. This work, the preparation, the endless repetition, the fine-tuning of each skill is the real work of becoming a champion. Most people fail to understand that success isn't instant. It doesn't happen in a moment of inspiration. It's a result of persistent effort, focus, and dedication over time. The hours spent learning from failure, the moments of doubt that are silenced by action, and the continuous pushing past comfort zones, these are the real contributors to greatness. It's not about having everything handed to you, it's about showing up every single day, grinding and working hard even when no one is watching. The real challenge lies in embracing the hard, unglamorous work. Anyone can rise to the occasion when the world is cheering them on, but the true test of character comes when you're working alone, away from the spotlight. The real victories are earned in those quiet moments. And it's in those moments where you separate yourself from everyone else. If you want to become great, you need to embrace the grind. You need to find peace in the hard work that no one else sees. It's the willingness to do what others aren't, to push when it's tough, to remain disciplined when the easy path is calling your name, because this is where you build the foundation of your success. Without the hours spent in the shadows, the moments of effort that seem insignificant, the spotlight would never shine on you. It's the work in the dark that makes the moments of brilliance possible. The world may only see a few seconds of glory, but it's those unseen hours, the blood and sweat, that truly define who you are and what you'll ultimately achieve. 2/2, there's a defining trait that separates those who are average from those who become truly unstoppable, and that trait is an obsession with improvement, not interest, not occasional effort, obsession. It's not just wanting to be better, it's needing to be better. It's waking up every day with the hunger to grow, to push further, and to become something more than you were yesterday. This mindset doesn't take weekends off. It doesn't settle after a win. It doesn't look at the scoreboard for validation. It's a fire that keeps burning, regardless of the results, because it's driven by something deeper than external rewards. Average people wait until life forces them to grow. They wait for problems, for setbacks, for crises before they take action. But those who are obsessed with improvement don't wait for life to push them. They lean into growth, they chase discomfort, they actively seek out their weaknesses, not to hide them, but to turn them into strengths. They're not afraid of failing because they know that failure is feedback. Every misstep is just another data point showing them how to level up. When you're obsessed with improvement, you're not looking for shortcuts, you're not hoping to get lucky, you're building systems, developing discipline, and doing the work day after day. Improvement becomes a way of life. It's in your thoughts, your actions, your habits. You find lessons in every interaction, opportunity in every challenge, and growth in every struggle. You don't get discouraged by how far you have to go. You get excited by how much more there is to master. This level of obsession isn't always glamorous. It often means sacrificing comfort, tuning out distractions and distancing yourself from people who are content with mediocrity. It means choosing to practice instead of party, to read instead of scroll, to build instead of wait. And while the world might not understand your intensity, the results will always speak for themselves. Because when you commit to constant improvement, your growth becomes undeniable. Your progress becomes inevitable. The people who dominate their fields, whether it's sports, business, or personal development, aren't necessarily the most talented, but they are the most committed to growth. They never stop learning, never stop refining, and never stop evolving. They understand that if they're not improving, they're falling behind. In their world, complacency is the real enemy, and progress, no matter how small, is the only true measure of success. To live with this kind of intensity requires purpose. You need a vision that's bigger than convenience. You need a reason to keep pushing, especially on the days when it would be easier to relax. But once you lock into that vision, once you make improvement non-negotiable, you become unstoppable. Because the person who is obsessed with growth will always outlast the one who's just interested. Talent might set the pace early, but obsession is what wins the race in the long run. Conor McGregor's rise wasn't the result of luck, timing, or chance. It was the outcome of a deliberate, unshakable decision. A decision to no longer live on the sidelines of life. A decision to no longer accept mediocrity as the norm. It's easy to look at someone's success and chalk it up to talent or opportunity, but that's a convenient lie people tell themselves to avoid the responsibility of doing the work. McGregor's transformation from a struggling young man in Dublin to one of the most iconic fighters in history didn't happen because he was lucky. It happened because he made a commitment so strong that nothing could shake it. He decided to live differently, to think differently, to act differently, and that decision wasn't a one-time thing. It was made over and over, every single day, through every training session, every failure, every moment of doubt. That's what most people don't understand. Real change begins the moment you stop negotiating with your old identity and commit to something greater. When Conor McGregor made that decision, he cut off any possibility of retreat. He didn't say, "I'll try." He said, "I will." There's a massive difference between interest and commitment. When you're interested, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed, you do it no matter what. This wasn't about proving something to the world. It was about proving something to himself. He had a vision, and that vision was non-negotiable. He saw himself holding championship belts before anyone even knew his name. He talked like a champion, trained like a champion, and walked like a champion long before the world called him one. That's not delusion, that's decision. He locked into a future so vivid in his mind that it pulled him through every obstacle and setback. He wasn't reacting to the world, he was creating one. He made the decision to bet on himself when no one else would. He chose to back his dream even when it looked impossible. That kind of decision requires courage, because it means stepping into uncertainty with no guarantees. It means walking away from safety and stepping into the unknown. But when that decision is fueled by vision, grit, and belief, it becomes a weapon more powerful than talent. McGregor decided that he wouldn't just fight, he would become unforgettable. He wouldn't just participate, he would dominate, and that decision showed up in everything, in how he trained, how he spoke, how he carried himself. It shifted his energy, it rewired his mindset. He didn't hope to succeed. He expected it because he had already committed to paying the price. And that price wasn't just in hours or sweat, it was in identity. He let go of the version of himself that accepted average. He killed off the excuses, the doubts, the stories that used to hold him back. He stepped into a new standard, and he made it permanent. Before any championship belt was placed around his waist, Conor McGregor was already winning the battle in his mind. Long before the fight began, he was training something more powerful than his left hand, his mindset. That's where the real edge was formed. While many fighters focused solely on physical strength, McGregor invested equally, if not more, in mastering the mental game. He understood that the body only performs at the level the mind allows, and so he trained his thoughts with the same intensity he trained his strikes. He visualized outcomes before they existed, disciplined his behavior when no one was watching, and built a belief system so strong it could bend reality. Visualization wasn't a game to him. It was a tool. He didn't just imagine winning, he lived it in his head. He saw the walkout, the knockout, the celebration. He immersed himself in the feeling of victory so deeply that when it finally came, it wasn't a surprise, it was fulfillment. This process of mental rehearsal conditioned his nervous system to expect greatness. His brain and body were aligned, rehearsed, and ready. That kind of preparation doesn't just build confidence, it builds certainty. And when you step into any arena with certainty, you already have a psychological edge. Alongside visualization, he was militant about discipline. Not the kind of discipline that just shows up when it's easy or convenient, but the kind that endures when it's painful, repetitive, and thankless. McGregor trained like a man possessed, not just for the spotlight, but because he made it part of who he was. Discipline showed up in his diet, his recovery, his schedule, and his focus. While others needed motivation, he had ritual. He didn't need to feel inspired to do the work. He was committed regardless of mood or circumstance. That level of consistency, executed over time, creates results most people only dream about. But perhaps his greatest asset was belief. An unshakable belief in himself, even when the world doubted him. He didn't just hope to win, he believed he was destined to. That belief wasn't arrogance, it was engineered. He spoke his goals out loud with conviction, not just to the media, but to his own subconscious. Repeating his truth, reinforcing his mission, until it became part of his identity. That belief acted as armor, protecting him from fear, doubt, and negativity. It gave him the fuel to push through exhaustion and the resilience to bounce back from setbacks. All three, visualization, discipline, and belief, formed the foundation of his mindset. They weren't motivational buzzwords, they were non-negotiables, tools he used with precision. While most fighters trained for a fight, McGregor trained for a legacy. And that legacy started in the mind. His mental preparation didn't just support his performance. It elevated it. It gave him control in chaos, composure under pressure, and confidence when the stakes were highest. He trained like every moment mattered because to him they did. Every mental rep, every visualization, every affirmation. It was all part of the fight long before the first punch was ever thrown. Your life will always reflect the standards you set. Not the dreams you have, not the goals you write down, but the level you refuse to drop below. That's what shapes your reality. Most people set goals, but they don't change their standards. They say they want greatness, but their daily behavior screams comfort. They say they want to lead, but they tolerate laziness, distraction, and mediocrity in themselves. The truth is simple. You don't get what you want. You get what you tolerate. Conor McGregor understood that long before the world knew his name. He didn't just set a goal to become a world champion. He raised the standard of what he demanded from himself every single day. This wasn't about perfection. It was about refusing to settle. He didn't allow himself to show up half-prepared. He didn't let fear dictate his pace or let fatigue become an excuse. He decided that if he was going to walk into a cage to fight another man, he was going to show up as the best version of himself, mentally, physically, emotionally. And that decision became a standard. There was no backup plan, no fallback identity. He trained, acted, and lived like a champion before he ever held a belt, because that was the only outcome his standards would allow. Your standards are reflected in the small choices you make every day, how early you get up, how focused you are when no one's holding you accountable, how much effort you put in when it would be easier to coast. The higher your standards, the less room you have for excuses, and that's what creates greatness, consistency powered by expectation. McGregor didn't rise to the occasion, he rose to his standards. His training sessions, his self-talk, his discipline with diet and recovery. None of that was random. It was all rooted in an internal code that demanded excellence. Most people wait for the world to validate them before they raise their expectations. But the truth is, the world will always mirror the energy you bring. If you walk like a professional, talk like a professional, and prepare like one, the world will eventually see you as one. That's what McGregor did. He showed up with championship energy long before the belts came. And that's why the belts came, because he became the type of person who could not only win them but sustain them. Raising your standards means refusing to be average even when it's easier. It means setting rules for yourself that others think are extreme. It means looking at your current situation, not with judgment, but with ownership, and asking, is this the best I can do? McGregor didn't just ask that question, he lived it. He pushed until his ceiling became his floor, and then he pushed again. Because when you raise your standards, your life eventually has no choice but to rise with them. Standards create pressure, but pressure creates diamonds, and he wasn't in it to be ordinary. He was in it to shine. The moment you achieve a goal, the work is not over, it's just evolved. True champions understand that success isn't a finish line, it's a checkpoint. Conor McGregor never allowed himself to be seduced by victory. He celebrated, yes, but only for a moment, then it was back to work. That mindset is rare because most people slow down after they win. They achieve a milestone and suddenly they relax, they take their foot off the gas. They start negotiating with the very habits that got them there, but not McGregor. He knew that staying on top requires even more focus than getting there in the first place. The hunger he had when he was broke didn't fade when he became rich. In fact, he found ways to amplify it. That's what separates the great from the one. Hit wonders. It's not the ability to achieve a goal. It's the decision to keep evolving after the goal has been reached. He didn't let success soften his edge. He sharpened it. He didn't say, I've made it. He said, I'm just getting started. And that perspective changed everything, because when you treat every level like it's the beginning, you never stop growing. Celebrating progress is important. It reinforces confidence, reminds you of how far you've come, and helps build momentum. But if you're not careful, it can also become a trap. People get attached to their last win. They start defining themselves by what they've already done. But Conor McGregor stayed dangerous because he never let yesterday's victory become today's identity. He wasn't chasing validation. He was chasing evolution. He was addicted to growth. That mindset kept him sharp, hungry, and prepared for what came next. There's a discipline in refusing to stay satisfied, not because you're ungrateful, but because you know there's another level. McGregor didn't look at his accomplishments and rest. He looked at them and asked, what's next? He understood that greatness isn't about reaching a certain point. It's about becoming the kind of person who can keep reaching. That mindset demands humility because it means accepting that no matter how good you are, you can always be better. And that truth is uncomfortable for most, but it's empowering for those who live to grow. He approached training with a mindset of curiosity, always looking for new ways to improve, new tools to add, new weaknesses to attack. He wasn't obsessed with being perfect, he was obsessed with being better. And that drive to evolve was rooted in discipline, not emotion. On the days when motivation disappeared, his identity took over. He trained because it was who he was, not just what he did. That's the real secret. When improvement becomes part of your identity, you no longer need to chase it. It becomes automatic. McGregor's journey reminds us that greatness isn't a moment, it's a lifestyle. It's a cycle of growth, breakthrough, and reinvention. The people who stay at the top are the ones who treat success as fuel, not a finish. They use it to power the next goal, the next challenge, the next evolution, because they understand that the real prize is not the belt, it's who you become in the process. The world often sees the performance, the flair, the knockout moment, but what they rarely understand is the identity behind it. Conor McGregor didn't just train to fight, he trained to become someone new. Every rep, every strike, every sacrifice was part of a much deeper transformation. He wasn't just chasing wins, he was building a version of himself capable of doing extraordinary things. That's the part most people miss. Success is never about what you do, it's about who you become. McGregor understood that if he wanted to achieve something no one else had to become someone no one else was willing to be. Transformation isn't about adding things to your life, it's about shedding the old skin. It's about letting go of your past identity, your limiting beliefs, your excuses, and everything that kept you small. The version of McGregor who was struggling to make ends meet wasn't the one who could hold multiple titles. That version had to die, and in his place a new man had to rise, one who was confident, focused, relentless, and dangerous. That identity wasn't something he was born with, it was something he created, piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. When people look at someone successful, they think he was always like that. But that's not true. No one is born a champion. You become one by conditioning your mind, your habits, and your spirit to operate at a higher level. McGregor made a conscious decision to stop operating like a man with limits. He started moving, speaking, and training as the version of himself he wanted to be, not the version he used to be. That level of transformation takes deep inner work. It takes brutal honesty, it takes accountability, and it takes an unwavering vision of who you're becoming. This shift isn't something that happens overnight. It's a process of constant refinement. You catch yourself slipping back into old patterns, and you correct. You hear the voice of doubt creeping in, and you silence it with action. You fall short, and you rise back stronger, not because it's easy, but because you're committed to the identity you've chosen. McGregor wasn't motivated by fame. He was pulled by the man he was becoming. That's why no setback could stop him, because his identity wasn't built on winning, it was built on evolving. He didn't just act confident, he became confidence. He didn't just put on a show, he embodied belief. Every word he spoke, every move he made, came from a deep alignment between who he said he was and how he lived. That alignment is power. When your actions reflect your identity, you become unstoppable. You don't need to fake it because you've already become it. That's why McGregor's presence was felt before he even entered the cage. People weren't just watching a fighter. They were witnessing a fully formed force, someone who had designed himself with precision and purpose. That kind of power isn't found, it's forged, and it starts with a decision to stop living like the person you were and to start becoming the person you were meant to be. In the fight game, it's not always the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest who win, it's the most adaptable. The ones who know how to pivot, evolve, and shift gears when the moment demands it. Conor McGregor didn't rise to the top by doing the same thing over and over. He studied, adjusted, and refined his approach constantly. Whether it was switching stances, adjusting striking angles, or reworking entire strategies after a loss, he understood one core truth. If you don't evolve, you become irrelevant. That truth doesn't just apply to the octagon. It applies to every area of life. Adaptability is survival. Adaptability is power. McGregor treated every fight as a puzzle to be solved. He didn't just rely on brute force. He relied on intelligence, timing, and precision. He wasn't afraid to change what wasn't working. After setbacks, he didn't make excuses. He made adjustments. That takes humility. It's easy to keep doing what's comfortable, to double down on what once worked. But real champions aren't loyal to comfort. They're loyal to progress. And sometimes, progress requires you to let go of strategies, habits, or mindsets that no longer serve you. That kind of self-awareness is rare, but it's also the secret to long-term dominance. When he lost, he didn't crumble. He recalibrated. He took the lessons, dissected every round, analyzed every flaw, and came back sharper. He understood that a loss is only permanent if you refuse to evolve from it. That resilience isn't rooted in ego. It's rooted in a growth mindset. It's the belief that you are never finished, never fixed, never done growing. McGregor embodied that mindset. He didn't let pride get in the way of progress. He welcomed criticism if it pointed to a blind spot. He embraced change even when it was uncomfortable. Adaptability also showed up in his ability to operate in different weight classes, different fighting styles, and different platforms. He didn't stay in the box that others put him in. He pushed the boundaries. He stepped into boxing, into business, into entertainment, not because it was safe, but because he refused to be defined by one domain. That willingness to explore new arenas, to take risks, to reinvent himself, that's what made him a phenomenon. He didn't limit his identity to fighter. He expanded it into entrepreneur, showman, brand, and beyond. And each time he adapted. People often think adaptability means weakness or indecision, but in truth, it's the highest form of strength. It's the ability to remain rooted in purpose while flexible in execution. It's knowing when to persist and when to pivot. McGregor never changed his vision, but he was constantly refining his path to get there. He understood that the game is always evolving, and to stay ahead, you have to evolve faster. That kind of agility isn't random. It's built through awareness, discipline, and courage. It's the mindset of someone who doesn't fear change, but uses it as fuel. Because at the highest levels, it's not just about who's the best, it's about who can become better, faster, and smarter when it matters most. True greatness is not measured by how loud you are when you're winning, but by how you respond when the world thinks you're finished. Conor McGregor's journey is marked not only by moments of triumph, but by how he handled failure, criticism, and setbacks with relentless determination. Comebacks don't happen by accident. They're engineered by those who refuse to let failure define them. And that refusal starts deep inside. When you're knocked down in front of the world, you have two choices: shrink into the shadows or rise with even more fire. McGregor chose the latter, time and time again. Setbacks test more than your skills. They test your character. They strip away the noise, the hype, the applause, and leave you face to face with who you really are. That's when most people break. That's when the excuses start, the blame begins, and the dreams die a quiet death. But McGregor used those moments to sharpen himself. He didn't hide from the criticism. He studied it. He didn't let the losses crush him. He let them carve him into something stronger. That mindset requires radical ownership. You can't grow through what you're unwilling to confront, and he confronted it all: the losses, the doubters, the pain, with brutal honesty and unshakable resolve. Resilience is not just the ability to bounce back, it's the ability to come back better. It's looking failure in the eye and saying, "This isn't the end of my story." That kind of mindset is forged through pressure, not praise. McGregor wasn't just fighting opponents. He was fighting to maintain belief in himself when the world had counted him out. And he didn't need permission to rise again. He gave himself the permission. That's what separates champions from quitters. When the lights go out and the crowd is gone and the path forward looks impossible, that's when real warriors emerge. Every comeback requires a decision to either dwell in defeat or use it as fuel. McGregor chose fuel. He returned to training not with bitterness, but with purpose. He studied, adjusted, and recommitted. And when he stepped back into the cage, he did it with a renewed fire, a deeper hunger, and a sharper edge, because he knew something most never learn: failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it. It's the initiation, the filter that separates those who want it from those who are willing to become it. Comebacks aren't about proving others wrong. They are about proving yourself right. They're a declaration that your spirit is bigger than your setback. McGregor made that declaration with every punch he threw, every time he walked back into the arena, every time he dared to put it all on the line again. He showed that pain can become power, that losses can become leverage, and that every fall holds the seed of a rise. And in those moments of return, bloodied, tested, but unbroken, he reminded the world that the strongest force is a man who refuses to stay down. So what does Conor McGregor really teach us? It's not just about fighting. It's not just about belts, records, or fame. It's about what's possible when a human being commits, truly commits, to constant, relentless self-improvement. He showed us that greatness isn't reserved for the chosen few. It's earned by those who are willing to do what most won't. He built himself from nothing, not through luck, but through clarity, vision, discipline, and an unwavering belief that he could become more. He lived every day like it mattered, because to him it did. This isn't just a story about a fighter, it's a blueprint, a roadmap for anyone who wants to elevate their life, redefine their limits, and rise above mediocrity. McGregor didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the perfect conditions. He created his conditions. He didn't chase motivation. He built identity, and every step of the way, he chose growth over comfort, challenge over ease, and progress over pride. Let this be your wake-up call. If you want to change your life, raise your standards. If you want to stand out, commit to becoming the version of yourself that scares your current self. Show up every day not as who you are, but as who you are becoming. Because the only limit is the one you refuse to break, and the fight for greatness, it's not out there, it's in you right now.